It's no secret that Overwatch took a lot of inspiration from TF2, from the game modes to the very design of the heroes. This isn't necessarily a bad thing, because as long as you're not just directly copying something, you can still create something great by taking some influence. And hey, the TF2 mercenaries are all fun to play, so taking their designs and modifying them to make something new and special is a great idea, all things considered. But be careful, as sometimes changing the smallest things can affect the feel of something, and if you learn the wrong lessons from something, you get Junkrat. Because while Junkrat's inspiration, the Demoman is a generally well-respected class with very little negative stereotypes about the people who made him, literally anyone who doesn't play Junkrat hates Junkrat. Now, we could just chalk this up with TF2 being a better game than Overwatch, but that's overly reductive and doesn't really teach us anything. Instead, we're going to break down every part of their kits, look at the minor differences that change everything, and why those were implemented in the first place, maybe even learning something about the fundamental design of those games in the process. Got all of that? Good. Now let's start with the most integral part of your kits, the grenade launcher. Right off the bat, what's the first main difference you see between these two weapons? That's right, the arc. The Demoman's grenade travels shorter and has a harsher drop-off, meaning the Junkrat's grenade launcher is typically better at longer ranges. This is due to the overall longer engagement distance in Overwatch, as damage fall-off is only reserved for hit-scan weapons and maps have generally longer sightlines with generally more open areas, while Team Fortress 2 has damage fall-off on almost everything but arcing projectiles and sniper rifles, and maps are more complex, resulting in close combat being more commonplace. There is nothing else I have to say about this change on its own, as both suit their respective environments. However, the longer range grenades of Junkrat have some interesting interactions when combined with the other elements of the grenade launcher, but we'll get there in a second. Moving on, another key difference between these grenade launchers is splash damage. Now, the Demoman's grenades seem to have a lot more of it. A lot of the time, the Demoman can just end up dealing massive damage to crowds by simply shooting one person or a building, while with Junkrat, you'll be lucky if you can hit two opponents at once. This is another part of Overwatch's general balancing, which focuses on speeding up projectiles and reducing the blast radius, which can be seen with Pharah's rockets and how Symmetra's alternate fire was changed over time. Again, nothing much to comment on here. However, the next difference between these two characters is where we really start to see why Junkrat has the reputation he has, both in and out of lore, because a grenade isn't really a grenade if there is no rollers. And while the Demoman's grenades will just idly roll by until detonating for less damage, Junkrat's grenades are an absolute nightmare to fight against, because if you make contact with them, they'll explode for full damage. Why is this annoying? Because aim is no longer a requirement, and you are no longer safe after a grenade misses you. It also encourages mindless spam, as you can just fire a bunch of grenades into somewhere you can't see and get free damage, alt charge, and kills. You can try the same thing with Demoman, and it's not nearly as effective unless you've got a good idea of the exact location of the enemy. The spam problem is further compounded by the speed and bounciness of the grenades, as Junkrat's grenades will just bounce all over the place when they hit a wall, meaning that a lot of the time you will get caught by a stray hit. Not only that, but due to the grenades going further, it's often a better idea to just blindly shoot down a sightline and get some damage. Main point is, Junkrat's grenade launcher requires less aim to do damage, and is therefore more annoying to fight. The funniest part about this is that Demoman's grenade launcher used to work in the same way, but in the 5th patch for TF2, the grenades no longer just explode on contact. Why did they do that? Because it's not fun to fight against. Nobody likes fighting a character that misses but still ends up killing you anyways, or manages to kill you without even knowing you are there. So that's the first main reason that people hate Junkrat compared to the Demoman. Rollers are far more obnoxious. So there we have one major reason why Junkrat gets so much hate compared to his inspiration, but we still have 3 more things to cover with the grenade launcher. First thing to cover is the reload. Demoman has to reload every grenade individually, with his reload in particular being on the slower side. Meanwhile, Junkrat could just shove the whole clip into the gun, with his reloads being pretty typical. This means that the Junkrat can afford to spam more grenades, which can be pretty annoying, as we've already covered. Also, As with every character in Overwatch, Junkrat has unlimited ammo, which contrasts the Demoman needing to refill on ammo if he overdoes it with the spam. Again, Junkrat is generally a spammier character. One more thing to cover is that in general DPS both characters are able to output, which is where the Demoman's edge really sets in. In TF2, the range of health pools is narrower than Overwatch, meaning that 8 out of 9 classes will die in 2 pipe grenades, with the heavy taking only an extra pipe to kill. In Overwatch, that's not happening. Junkrat's grenades do 125 damage, so you'll only be landing 2 shots on squishy heroes, and this is assuming that they're not getting healed, in a game where 2/5 of the enemy team are healers. In other words, despite Junkrat's grenades having more aggravating properties, Demoman's grenade launcher is just better for killing people outright. Keep that in mind for now, because that's going to be a theme for the rest of this analysis. Speaking of Junkrat trading raw lethality for making the opponent mad, it's time to look at the Sticky Bomb Launcher and Junkrat's mines. For the first main difference between mines and Sticky Bombs, the Demoman can have a lot more of them. 8 Sticky Bombs in the clip, 8 Sticky Bombs out on the battlefield at maximum, and while the reload is slow, it sure is a lot faster than 7 seconds. Meanwhile, the Junkrat can only hold 2 mines of them at once and only 1 can be laid at a time. This alone makes the Sticky Bomb Launcher way more powerful than Junkrat's mines could ever be, since having 8 explosives at any given moment is downright tyrannical, leading to deadlier traps and more oppressive pressure, and the range boost from charging the Sticky Bombs is just icing on the cake. But this is a video on why people hate Junkrat, so how could that be if Sticky Bombs are more powerful? First off, we need to consider the main weakness of the Sticky Bomb Launcher. You can't detonate the bombs instantly. Instead, there's a delay to make sure you can't just instantly get an enemy off you, since the Sticky Bombs are pretty easy to aim and the main skill of them is proper spacing and timing. Junkrat's mines don't have this restriction. You can just throw them out whenever you want, whenever you feel slightly threatened. Oh yeah, did I mention that the Junkrat doesn't need to swap weapons or anything to use the mines? This seems harmless on paper, but in practice, this means Junkrat can out a one-shot combo light classes. If a Junkrat hits a direct at close range, you can easily draw on a mine afterwards to finish the job. Sure, it's light at close range, but I'm 99% sure that most players don't like dying for making a small mistake. Another trait of both mines that is worth mentioning is the knockback, which brings us into the territory of crowd control mechanics. Granted, this is only soft CC compared to the Scourge of the Earth known as hard CC, but still worth noting. With the Demoman Sticky Bombs, there is naturally some knockback due to the nature of explosives, but they're mainly tied to damage and stickies only do significant knockback on either traps or perfectly aimed and timed airburst stickies. With Junkrat, it doesn't matter how well placed the mine is, the enemy is getting sent flying, and this is even worse with the previous factor of Junkrat being able to detonate the mine instantly. And we haven't even gone into the movement or utility of the weapon. You know what, in fact, let's just dedicate a whole section to the movement of both characters. Why not? Before we go back to explosive jumping, I want to talk about the general movement of both characters to show how both games handle class weaknesses. Junkrat isn't anything special to talk about, as every character except for 2 have the same base movement speed. With Demoman, however, his comparatively low speed is a key part of his balance. As well as his damage is incredibly high, it's balanced out by how hard it is for him to run away, since every class except for 2 can easily chase him down, which is a clear identifiable weakness that most classes can take advantage of. Junkrat's counterplay, however, is not as well thought out, but that's something I want to talk about later, so let's move on to blast jumping. When I said that Dylan struggles escaping from sticky situations, it assumed that blast jumping would help with that, but there's 2 main problems with that. The first being the aforementioned arm tied to the Sticky Bomb Launcher. This means you have to wait even more to have a chance to leave, and enemies can just foil your escape plan by simply breaking the bombs. As we already discussed, Junkrat doesn't have the same restriction, meaning not only can he knock his opponent away, but he can knock himself away, making it harder to chase him down. One could argue that pill jumping is more comparable to these bias escapes, but 1, you actually need to hit an enemy point blank with one of your pipe grenades, and 2, you might just end up killing yourself, which leads to self-damage. Explosives deal damage both to the enemy and yourself, so simply sticky jumping away isn't always going to guarantee safety. If anything, it can kill if you're careless. There's a way to circumvent this self-damage by equipping the sticky jumper, but that comes with the drawback of not being able to damage enemies with sticky bombs either. I would do a clever segue into talking about Junkrat, but you already know what I'm going to say. No self-damage means no proper risk for jumping away, making it even more annoying to chase down this annoying rat. Also, there's no fall damage either, so you don't even have to worry about going too high unlike Demoman, who will take a double whammy of damage if he isn't careful with traversal. I could also talk about the skill sake of both characters' move, but this has been done to death. Something, you press shift to rocket jump in Overwatch. So that's all the main parallels between Demoman and Junkrat, so we should probably wrap this up. Oh. It appears we're not done with this wrap quite yet. Let's talk about his remaining 3 abilities that turn from a more frustrating Demoman clone to one of those loathsome characters in the Overwatch cast, which is quite the accomplishment. First one on the chopping block is a steel trap, which is pretty self-explanatory. Junkrat throws a trap on the ground, and any opponent unlucky enough to step on it gets trapped there for a bit. You already know why people hate it, it's hard CC, the worst kind of ability in the game. Now, the Demoman also has traps that can instantly kill you. However, there's 3 main reasons why Demoman gets away with this, and Junkrat ends up getting people's nerves with the steel trap. The first is visual clarity. Sticky bombs are brightly colored to whatever team it belongs to, making them instantly recognizable. This is why you don't place sticky bombs out in the open, usually you have to obscure them by placing them around corners. But the steel trap ends up only slightly sticking out from the ground, meaning half the time you end up defusing the trap will either be by complete accident or by using a hero lock-on weapon, like Winston or Moira. The second reason is manual versus automatic activation. Sticky bomb traps require your full attention, as you have to pay attention to who is in range of the trap in order to activate it at the right time, as sticky bombs don't detonate themselves. With a steel trap, all you do is throw it down and wait for an opponent to walk on it. Simple as that. This second part isn't that bad until you draw in another factor, which is the third part of the equation, permanence. Kill a Demoman and you no longer have to worry about his traps. Kill a Junkrat, it's still going to be a problem down the line, one of the reasons being that the steel trap only goes away when someone breaks it or if the Junkrat decides to reposition it. But notice how I said one of the reasons, as Junkrat's passive another way he can cause damage beyond the grave. It's basically just borrowed up from Call of Duty, except he drops a bunch of mini grenades rather than one normal grenade. I don't really have much to say except that it's only killing someone only for the enemy to kill you anyways. To cap off this dumb ability recap, we have Junkrat's ultimate, Riptire, where it unleashes a controllable explosive that can either be detonated on command or will fizzle out after a time limit or taking 100 damage. Also, Junkrat who activates this can't move while controlling the tire, so feel free to assassinate him. Again, I don't really have too much to say about this ability, because the tire is basically just a free kill as long as you're going after someone who can't deal high burst damage or is hard to aim projectiles. Not to mention, Junkrat doesn't actually need to risk his life by going to the line of sight of the enemy to use it, meaning that this ultimate serves a risk-free kill. Not the strongest ultimate in the game, but certainly one that will grind your gears, or rather, tires. But enough about talking about the abilities everyone already knew was annoying. We need to get to something that complicates things a little bit. Viability. Remember how I said previously that Demoman's grenade launcher and sticky bombs are generally better than Junkrat's equivalent? This also carries over to how viable the Demoman is, as he's generally considered one of the best classes in the game, if not the best combat class. High mobility, high DPS, a decent health pool, and one of the best matchup spreads in TF2 make Demoman a staple in both 12v12 casual and organized competitive play, and often near the highest parts of tier lists. Junkrat, on the other hand, is as lucky. Despite all his gimmicks, Junkrat often doesn't have the same reliability as other heroes, and could be often described as a noob trap character. His trap and total make him become pretty ineffective when going up against good players, and while Riptire is pretty alright, all things considered, it doesn't make up for his general lack of range when we get him cooked by hit scan and flying heroes. Sure, he has a one-shot combo up close, but that's pretty situational when compared to the other one-shot combos used by far better characters. Again, it all comes back to ease of use versus power, which Demoman vs. Junkrat can be considered an entire case study on, and a general commentary on the approach that these two games take with player empowerment. Demoman's grenades are hard to land, but are far better at tearing apart crowds of enemies. Junkrat's splash jumps may be easier to pull off and not nearly as risky, but Demoman has a lot more control and potential distance when blast jumping. While the steel trap and bar jump may result in some free kills, it's hard to argue that it's better than 6 more explosives. Overwatch focuses on making the options easy to access from the start, while TF2 focuses on making options that will continue to get stronger the more experienced players are. Not to say that Overwatch doesn't have its mechanics or characters that lean towards skill, look at Genji, or that TF2 is entirely skill-based, as otherwise the pyro wouldn't exist. In fact, one of Overwatch's main defining factors, which is the instant strafe acceleration, not only exists because of convenience, but also increases the skill ceiling for aim. But the bottom line is that when your game design is focused around being accessible, you're going to end up with some characters that feel cheap, Junkrat being a prime example of this. But viability isn't just measured by how much value a character will get, but how easily their game plan could get shut down. Which brings us to counterplay. One common point between both characters is how much their game plans are defined by effective range, which means that getting into a range that puts at a disadvantage is the most clear-cut way to take down a Demoman or Junkrat. With the Demoman, he's most vulnerable at close range due to his explosives dealing self-damage and his sticky bombs becoming practically worthless. Additionally, due to the nature of his projectiles, any fast-moving target is going to be hard to hit, meaning scouts are the best suited class to counter him. However, there's still the chance that the Demoman can just hit 2 pills in a row, meaning he's not completely out of options. That is, unless he's cut off ammo. There's another problem that Demoman suffers from, his long reload speed. While the Demoman outputs a lot of damage, he has a long recovery period before exhausting all of his pills and sticky bombs, meaning there's an opportunity to go in for the kill. Once again, this guy is pretty good at capitalizing on it. There's also the power of being able to use his own projectiles against him, but that's pretty separated from the Demoman's inherent design. Speaking of counterplay being separated from the inherent design of the character, that's what most of Junkrat's counterplay falls into, due to the limited nature of Overwatch's hero designs. The most obvious form of this is flying heroes like Pharah and Echo going out of Junkrat's range, making it so that Junkrat can't really fight back effectively. However, some characters like Sombra and D.Va can straight up bum rush Junkrat, invalidate almost all of his kit, and then proceed to violate him. There is also the typical strategy of baiting out his cooldowns and then killing him, but that applies with almost every other Overwatch hero, so the Junkrat exclusive counterplay comes out as stopping him from playing the game. Then again, that's just Overwatch counterplay in a nutshell, due to how hard the counters are in this game. Who needs stuff like skill, thought, or strategy to overcome an enemy? We just pick their counter and force them to stop playing their main. That is until they do the same things to you, because welcome to Overwatch. I'm not saying that counter swapping is inherently bad, however this degree is absurd, where instead of just getting a small advantage against an enemy's class, you get the ability to prevent them from playing the game. However, you also have to consider that counter swapping isn't just frustrating for one person, but also for the other person swapping to a character, as unless you like playing the characters that counter the other guy, you're likely sacrificing some of your own enjoyment to make sure the other guy doesn't have fun. Essentially, nobody wins this counter pick heavy interaction. With the Demoman, on the other hand, people have a clear strategy to beat him that can be applied with multiple characters, and doesn't involve violating the other player. Most of the time, at least. You get the point. Demoman's counterplay is usually healthier than Junkrat. What else did you expect from this video? I'm running out of stuff to say, so I think this is a good part to start wrapping it up. Overall, the main way to describe how Junkrat gets a worse reputation than the Demoman is simply how his kit is designed to make people want to hang him. His grenades require less aim, his mines don't need good target to lead to one-shot combos, and the other 3 abilities are just plain annoying. Despite this, the Demoman is generally stronger, due to the fact his kit focuses more on being practical rather than being gimmicky. Additionally, Demoman's counterplay is available to more classes and doesn't feel as oppressive to the other party, while Overwatch's approach to class counters is infamously unfun. But most importantly, the Demoman can say the N-word and the Junkrat cannot. Yes, this is what we're ending the video on. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Get out of here.